All right, well, greetings everyone, and welcome to an evening of the School of Love, fans of love. So great to be back here in cold, wintry downtown Toronto after being away for a month in sunny, sandy Costa Rica. But glad to be back here so I can continue bringing down the goods, doing the work, and sharing the love with people here in Toronto. So excited. Yes, we've got another session, session 3 of the second series of the School of Love. And this is session 3 called Love is Learning. Now in the previous session, which was called Love is Listening, we looked at the power of listening and how listening with an open ear and an open heart is an extension of love. It really is using the capacity of love. And my vision actually for many years has been to build a community of conscious communicators, to build a community of conscious communicators. Why? Well, because I believe listening assists shifts in consciousness. That is a very powerful gesture to offer to another, to listen, because it assists shifts in consciousness. Being heard can have a huge impact on where someone's consciousness goes or doesn't go. In my Skilled Friends class, I often use the example of a child riding in the back seat of a car while the mother is driving along, say talking on her cell phone, not really paying attention, but the child sees a clown walking on the sidewalk. And this gets the child excited, and the child starts going, "Mom, look at the funny clown. Mom, look at the funny clown. Look at the funny clown." But mother's busy driving the car, talking on the cell phone, and doesn't hear what the child is saying. So the child persists. "Mom, look at the funny clown. Look at the funny clown. You're missing the funny clown." Finally, the mother pulls away from her cell phone and sees what's going on and acknowledges what the child is saying, that there's a funny clown there. Goes, "Oh yeah, you're right. There's a funny clown there on the sidewalk. Ha ha, yeah, I see the funny clown." Okay, the child feels heard. The child is heard, and then what happens? Then the child stops saying, "Look at the funny clown." There's a shift in consciousness. And then the child can then move on to its next thought. Something new can then flow into its consciousness. And we're all given these things in life all the time that captivate our attention. We live in this realm of riddles, this place of puzzles. And as we work through these riddles and puzzles, we progress from one thing to the next level of our ego education. Somewhat like a video game, we move to the next level to continue to challenge our adeptness and skill. Why? It's because we feel like something has happened, something has been acknowledged, and we're able to shift our consciousness into its next step. And it all, these riddles and puzzles, gets us listening and paying more attention, especially what is going on in our thought life, which is really, really important. We need to attend to our thought life and listen to our thought life. Otherwise, it could become unhealthy. And a lot of mental health issues are completely unnecessary and wouldn't require treatment if we just took time to listen more intently. Listening to ourselves and listen to others in a way that helps them to hear themselves. Love is listening. I like to listen so intently to others so that after the fact, maybe not immediately, maybe not until the next day or the next week or perhaps years later, the person that I have listened deeply to will look back on that moment and realize what a gift of time and space was offered to them. A moment of immense purity that even if they didn't feel they deserved it, perhaps suffering from low self-esteem or perhaps personal insecurity, or perhaps the opposite, having inflated egotism and opinions and self-righteousness, they were blind to what was being given to them in the intent listening and the reflections that were given and the prompting with questions. They were not aware of the pure love that was hidden in that moment of time and space. But maybe at some point later, they gain a moment of humble objectivity, of lucid reflection, and they realize that moment was 100% a gift for them, that I was giving them a gift of time and space to unpack something within themselves, within the sometimes crazy chaos of the world. And they wake up and realize at that moment, love was listening. Someone was listening with love. I love that. I love when I can give that. I also like it when I feel I have successfully circumvented and avoided using any communication stoppers, which I hope you were able to obtain the PDF list of those and look through them. Because to me it's kind of like a maze to avoid using those things in the maze of a conversation. And I feel really good when I've been able to avoid using them, that I have kept a clean space and only mirrored what they have said. And I've just asked questions rather than made statements. Or I have invited questions. Because questions have a magical magnetic power that will attract answers. Not answers from me, but answers from beyond me, beyond self. You could say from the beyond. So, and when I've done this well, listening to another and facilitating the space, that the other person goes, yes, that is it. That is exactly right. They feel heard. They feel acknowledged. I feel I hit the bullseye. And their big yes is like a prize that pops out at the end. So all this simply requires creating an environment, a listening environment or environment of time and space where the seed of love within each of us can be unpacked and grow. The seed of love that I spoke about in the first series, that is a gift of the universe for all of us to freely receive. When we give the right environment to that seed of love, it can unpack and grow. And I love the one of the quote from Rudolf Steiner who says that love is for the world what the sun is for external life. Love is for the world what the sun is for external life. So when we bring love into the world, the love of listening, that kind of space, holding that space, it's like sunlight upon the inner life of that person, upon the seed of love within them that allows it to open and grow like a plant. Love is like sunlight that causes things to warm, open, and grow. And add to this loving listening, and you are creating a time and space for really the whole planet to open and grow through that individual. Because it is through us as individuals that the planet is manifesting itself, particularly at this stage of the planet. It is the human ego, the human ego, that is birthing the next stage of the planet. And so to create this quality of space sometimes requires more won't power than willpower, where we won't or don't say anything, but simply hold silence. Because silence is a quality of space and time that allows the pure sunlight to shine in, a pure sunlight that is not cluttered with words, egotism, opinions. This silence allows for a milking of the unmanifest into manifestation. So on that note, let's take a moment to hold silent space, doing the threefold coherence with one hand on the belly, one hand on the heart, and listening into the silence for something that invites a state of veneration. A veneration for something higher than yourself. So in threefold coherence, just really listening into the silence to see what may be there. Learning to be comfortable with silence. And how sweet the space can be to sit together in silence. So in this session, the thesis we will be exploring is that the key to cognizing a deeper, more expanded reality, which includes the unmanifest aspects of the universe, the unmanifest aspects of the universe that are there and inform the manifest aspects of the universe, is love. Love is the key to this cognizing power. Now I know half of the scientists listening to this will hit the stop button and move on to something else. But I believe the other half will continue to listen because they know that in creating a theory of everything, which is what's being built here, we have to include love. Because we know love does exist and needs to be included in the equation of all things. Or is love just some disturbing anomaly that keeps troubling us, as it was to the architect of the Matrix? Love was that component in the equation he couldn't fit in. Or is love an overarching central force, the power of powers, and needs to be understood and included before we can proceed any further in the unpacking of other powers, be they human or technological? So what I'm proposing in this lesson is that love, a higher love, is a force that allows us to unite with something else, anything else, and to know it truly for what it is. Which is why the title of the session is Love is Learning. We can attempt to unite with things, as we do all the time, in an effort to know who or what they are. But until we understand love as a cognitive bridging power, and worketh with it as such, we will not be uniting with anything in a way in which it can truly reveal to us what it is. Which is why I have the following quote on the front page of the School of Love website, quote from Rudolf Steiner. Only if I love something can it reveal itself to me. Only if I love something can it reveal itself to me. Without this higher form of love, then, just to take the opposite, instead of experiencing what the person, place, or thing really is, we'll be experiencing something of ourselves instead. We'll be experiencing all our past history, our filters, etc., experiencing outer life through the lens of ourselves, instead of the pure reality of whatever it is we are looking at, or listening to, or endeavoring to get to know. So I need to stop right here and address the question, does that mean we abandon all past experience and learning so it doesn't get in the way of pure experiential phenomenological knowing that is not tainted by our past experiences? No, not at all. We're not talking about abandoning our past experiences. We need those. We need to value those. We need to treasure those. But we need to add to it something else. What do we add to our past experiences? More experiences? Not exactly. What we want to add is a new way of cognizing or recognizing what it is that is before us. We want to add a way of cognizing that includes the warmth of love as a cognitive power. So let me repeat the quote, which is the keynote of this session. Only if I love something can it reveal itself to me. That's a big statement, and for me it brings up two large questions. Number one, it gets us to question the nature of knowledge, epistemology you could say, and the way in which knowledge can be accessed. It gets us to question the nature of knowledge and the ways in which knowledge can be accessed. And number two, it gets us to question the real purpose, power, and potential of love. What's this about love as a cognitive power? But I love this. I love these questions because it opens up the playing field. The playing field for bringing together all the ideas we've been building through Series 1 and now in Series 2, and indeed all the ideas humanity has been building, and quite rapidly, in our collective bank of knowledge through the many different means. And now to ask questions about knowledge itself. How to get knowledge. What is it that knowledge is for? What is its purpose in the grand scheme of the planet, which is supposedly to become free beings and intelligently and consciously build a one body with knowledge. So now in this session, Love is Learning, considering that love and a higher form of love is a power or portal of perception, that only if I love something can it reveal itself to me. And in doing this, I will largely be referencing the work of Rudolf Steiner, but I would also like to acknowledge the many teachers of the past, teachers, mystics, gurus, etc. in the past who also pointed to love's ultimate power. But one of the reasons I refer to the words of Rudolf Steiner so much in my research and have continually returned to him and his work over the span of my seeking and vocation as a spiritual teacher, it's simple. He gives me hope. Steiner gives me hope like few other spiritual guides. How does he give me hope? He gives me hope that I can know. That I can know. Not just knowing in the sense that he gives me some poetic platitude to stick in my mind in hopes that it appeases my desire to know. And there's lots of that. Just give me a poetic platitude, stick it in my mind, and tell my desire to know to just shut up. No, he gives me hope that I can develop myself in such a way through the exercises he lays out, that something will open in me that will truly empower me to see for myself and know for myself beyond the theoretical and into a practical, phenomenological, experiential knowing, to truly know something in its essence. But Rudolf Steiner is not one to give easy answers either, or to spell things out fully for us. He knows that the path to knowing is a path of personal initiation and personal activation. There's no way around it. It was the same back in grade school. If you wanted to access all the interesting stuff in the books around you, you had to learn how to read. You had to learn that skill. And now, if you want to access all the information that is available through other means, you'll have to prepare yourself for that too. You'll have to learn, you could say, a higher form of reading. So a person who seeks to know must make a full commitment of the self in order to receive a true knowing of anything. It takes the highest commitment because, as Steiner says, only if I love something can it reveal itself to me. And does not loving something involve something of a commitment? If you're loving something, there's something of a commitment, even if it's just for a moment or a minute, that you are committed with yourself and the love of self to it, that it may reveal something of itself to you. Because things reveal themselves only when we're in a place to receive the revealing. And I consider this perspective, this approach to knowing, as part of a big paradigm shift that we're currently undergoing, or at least some sectors of society are undergoing this transition in cognition. Others may stick with the older ways, the rote book ways, and that is their freedom to do so. But there are new ways opening up into which we can and need to step into in order to serve the evolving needs of the planet. And the new way is that ultimately accessing knowledge involves something of a revelation. We've all experienced this. There should be no surprise. We've all experienced where something suddenly becomes clear to us, like the penny drops. You suddenly see something that was there all the time, but your mind was not in the place yet where it could receive it, to receive the revealing. So things get revealed when we are ready for them to be revealed, because learning takes place inside of you. Learning takes place inside of you, not outside of you. The information is there all along. It's there. It's just waiting for you to open up and to receive it. A revealing. And this is different from the ways we have been accustomed to in our modern systems of education and scientific inquiry. Currently, accessing knowledge is more like extracting what we can out of an object through dissection, analysis, extrapolation, and this does indeed give us some information. And it is a form of intellectual power being put to use, but it's only one aspect of our full human potential. And as such, it is the only, if it's the only resource we rely on, it can ultimately be very limiting to our knowing. And we are actually ignoring other ways of accessing and learning all the time. We're ignoring that we have other ways that we're using. We simply block this fact out of our awareness because we've had it educated out of us. The fact that we can intuitively access things. So it has been deleted from our roster of possibilities. So now it's time to undelete some things that have been deleted through modern education. It is time to open up the playing field. And now we are looking at how love and the quest for truth go hand in hand. And I choose these words quite intentionally, that love and knowledge have a hand-in-hand relationship. Now, in approaching this, right off the bat, it will involve a commitment of effort on your part, on my part, on all of our part. To understand what we're about to unpack, it will involve taking up a practice, an important practice, probably the most important practice you could ever do. A practice I want you to start today, and we will do it today after the break. But I want you to do it today and then do it every day. Every day for the rest of your life, this practice. And the source of this practice is Rudolf Steiner. And it's something he pointed to as one of the most important practices any person could do who sincerely seeks an enlightened understanding of things. And this is the review exercise. The review exercise is to be a daily review. To take a few minutes, not hours, but just a few minutes, and do it regularly to review your day. A point to help you in doing this is it's best to not do it just before going to bed. Otherwise, you'll end up going to sleep. We want to do this while we are awake. Although it is said by Steiner and others that we do review our day when we pass over into sleep. And we even do a review of our life after we pass over into death. But we'll leave those things as a sidebar comment for the moment. So this review practice is going to take willpower. But this is part of the purpose, to strengthen the will. In fact, that is the name of this book, which is a compilation of all the things Rudolf Steiner said about this practice. Strengthening the will. The review exercises. Rudolf Steiner. He spoke about this many times in different places over the course of his life as a teacher. So very important to acknowledge that this is going to require an effort of will, but it will strengthen your will. And if there's anything that people are suffering from due to our modern sedentary culture is a weak will. The weakening of the will and weakening of willpower, which is very serious because it is undermining, you could say, self-control, which means other things come in to control where we don't have self-control. Another main point of this practice, the review practice, is to do the review in reverse. To review your day in reverse. Doing it in reverse pulls your consciousness out of the usual flow of time going in a forward motion. So you will experience time in reverse by looking at your day in reverse. As you pull your mind out of this usual flow of time, you'll also be able to look at things different spatially. You begin to look at yourself from the outside, as if looking at another person. You'll see yourself from an objective perspective as you review your day backwards. And all this will enable you in becoming a greater master of time and space. Further to this, as you continue to do this faithfully, day after day, strengthening the will and strengthening the muscle of memory, and seeing life from a new perspective, a higher perspective, because it's like going to a party and pictures are taken, and then you look at the picture later, that night or next day or whenever, and you're going to see things from a different perspective. You're going to see things from the camera's perspective, and you're going to see things that you didn't see when you were there in the room being photographed. And you go, oh, I didn't realize that person was there. Oh, I didn't even notice that art was on the wall. Oh, I didn't realize my shirt was crooked. Oh, I didn't realize how good looking I am. But this is part of the purpose, is to get this objective perspective by looking at yourself as if looking at a different person. And this is one of the safest and surest ways to dissolve lower aspects of the ego without dissolving the ego itself, which can happen when working with particular techniques on different paths. But this practice is solid, it's safe and sure in developing the ego nature in the proper way. But the thing that we want to look for is actually a strengthening of our selfhood, not a weakening of it. This will then translate into what we looked at in the previous session, love is listening, and how our inner ear opens in a new way. To hear not only what is spoken in the space, but also what is not spoken in the space, or what was not seen in the space. To pick up on the unmanifest, as well as the manifest things. And through this we can then be more empowered, strengthened in our selfhood to assist in the birthing of what wants to be manifest. For part of our role as a human being in the grand equation of things, of the planet, is to be a midwife to the unmanifest. So we want to work at removing as many blocks as possible to this role of being a midwife, of manifesting the unmanifest. And this review exercise is going to strengthen us in doing that. And in this effort, the enhanced abilities we develop from doing this backward review exercise each day leads to what Steiner calls freedom from the laws of necessity. Freedom from the laws of necessity. What does he mean by that? It means that we are freer to act in ways that are self-directed and not just coming out of the necessity or demands of the moment, the external demands that so often direct and lead our lives. This strengthening of will, this awakening of this objective perspective of the self is going to free us from the laws of necessity and being externally directed all the time, because we become an awakened self. And in this way we become more independent, less enmeshed in the external or the collective or the tribal mind that we're still to a large degree enmeshed in. This ability to pay more attention to things as we review them from a freer inner space will make us much freer and alive in what? Our capacities to cognize. Our cognitive capacities are going to grow through this practice. Our intelligence will evolve out of its own accord, like a seed unpacking from within, and not just shaped by the world around us and the way others think. We are moving in the direction of becoming a free being. And why is this? Why is this? Because acquiring knowledge from a truly receptive place within oneself needs to be paralleled with the acquisition of self-knowledge, which is what you're going to be getting through the review exercise. We're acquiring self-knowledge, which opens the space to be receptive to acquiring greater knowledge of things beyond the self. And that is the willingness and effort to look at and understand yourself. And what this means is to understand yourself on both a personal level and a universal level. Self-knowledge means to understand yourself both on a personal level and universally what it means to be a human. And what that means is that you can see your own evolving nature, your personal evolving nature, as you slowly crawl out of the swampaverse of existence. And as you do that, you come to understand what it is to be a human being. As we wrestle with our own personal nature, we come to understand more universally what it is to be a human being, which is something sadly misunderstood in modern times. Sadly misunderstood in modern times, what it is to be a human, despite all the advances in technology and specialists studying the human being from every which angle, and our ability to quantify and map atomic nature. We are still largely in the dark as to how the powers of the human mind work. And modern education, which is based on modern science, has currently fallen into a very materialistic perspective. and has in some ways led us away from much of the knowledge we previously had as humanity, and an understanding of what a human being is and can do and is intended to do. And this trend in science will continue until science can evolve into something of a spiritual science, or a spiritualized science. And the review exercise we're going to do is based on spiritual science, and it's sometimes also referred to as the Rückschau practice, which is the German word for review. So if you want to look up Rückschau review exercise online, you can learn more about it that way, or acquire this book, Strengthening of the Will. Because, as I said, it's a very important practice and will have a deeply transformative effect upon you, and will bring you to a place that's known somewhat by the confusing and seemingly contradictory term of selflessness. It'll bring you to a place of selflessness, and I say that's a confusing and contradictory term because in fact you're not actually selfless, but rather have grown into a greater self, a stronger self, but have purged out some of the taint of egotism. In fact, you've become more of an expanded self rather than an inflated ego, which is so much the default these days, because we know knowledge puffeth up, but love edifies. So you'll also see how through this taking of extra time and care in your day to review your life, combined with the enhanced ability to hold space in listening to others, as was taught in the previous session, will lead to a significant growth of a certain important quality in ourselves. That is the growth of compassion. What is compassion? Well, passion. Com means with, and passion, sometimes rendered as love, really means to feel with the other. A pathos, to be in sympathy with, especially with the suffering of another. It is an expression of love. And so you could say, with compassion, we are with love. We are with love, or in love, with whatever it is we are putting our attention on. We have compassion toward it. And the main point is that in growing this capacity of compassion is it allows us to connect with something other than ourselves. Combined with this development of the objectivity that comes, we open up a space to be able to connect with something else other than ourselves in a new way. And this objectivity piece is certainly something that science aspires towards. They're all about objectivity, in their work to extract knowledge out of the world. But you could say that the objectivity that we're developing here, because it's paralleled by knowledge of the self-knowledge, is an objectivity which could be called subjectively objective. Subjectively objective. And I'm just going to leave you to contemplate what that means and what that's pointing to. But the main question is, why does this personal review practice have such a powerfully beneficial and transformative effect on us? Well, in a word, dying. Dying. The daily review becomes something of a daily dying. We die to self as we look at ourself from beyond the self. We die to self as we look at the self from beyond the self. And we do this consciously. We know to go to sleep each night is already something of a dying, But it is not so much of a conscious dying as when we take the time and effort to look back over the day and listen into the hidden meaning and messages that were embedded in it, like looking at a photograph and seeing things we didn't notice before. Then the hidden things are no longer hidden, no longer embedded, because we are creating time and space to allow this sort of knowledge, self-knowledge, to be revealed to us in those moments. It's a revelation of knowledge that comes in the review through this form of living dying. Living dying. And dying is a natural process we witness everywhere in nature. Everything goes through birth, life, reproduction, death, and rebirth. But it is something we have to willingly and consciously submit ourselves to on an egoic level. On an egoic level, out of free will. It's not through free will that we die physically, or things in nature die physically. We're kicking and screaming to stay alive. But out of free will, we can submit ourselves to a living dying on an egoic level. That's the only way it's going to happen on that level. We have to exercise the ultimate thing, the ultimate aspiration of our existence, and that is to be a free being. As a free being, to freely submit to living dying, which is what the review exercise is, if I can put it that way. And then what happens? And then what happens? Through this work, an inner knowing grows. Through this work, an inner knowing will grow. The knowing that science seeks to know, but science cannot know. Why? Because it's only humans that can know. It's only a human that can know. Knowing is something that a human does, not science. Knowing is what a human does. And science, to a large degree, has cut the human out of the equation of knowing. It's not scientists that know, it's science that knows. So science has lost a lot of information about what the human is and no longer recognizes what the human has, as was explained in the first series. And as I pointed out there, the riddles of existence can only be resolved within the human being. And this will require the development of what I keep calling omnidirectional cognition. But now we can add to this idea of omnidirectional cognition the selflessness and compassion that is induced in us through a daily dying and coming to self-knowledge. We open up a space in ourselves, a space unencumbered by egotism and the taint of past experience, where we can have a clean and clear connection to whatever it is we seek to know, and can have a true experience of it, of any phenomenon we wish to understand rightly. Why? Why? This is because we are no longer speaking of any ordinary garden variety version of love, obviously. We are now looking at an elevation of love. Yay! An elevation of love. It is moving us in the direction of a higher love, a higher form of intercourse, you could say, which leads to a higher knowing. And this elevation of love is an elevation from how it is expressed usually at, you could say, the animal level. And animals certainly have an expression of love. And we humans have an animal component within us, along with a plant component and a mineral component. So we express these. We express animal love as well from that animal part of ourselves. But part of our task is to go beyond that. Animals are restricted by their form and function. And so the expression of their love is restricted to their form and function. But we humans have an edge where we can go beyond form and function. We can go beyond the instincts and patterns that drive us. We can even go contrary to the instincts and patterns that drive us, that govern all life. We can go beyond our desires even to a place of higher love, elevated love. An animal desires to live. You can see that in their striving and struggles. But we humans need to go counterintuitively. We need to seek to die. We need to seek to die. As strange as it may sound, we need to strive to die. Not as in a physical death, although the impulse is sometimes interpreted in that way, even perhaps erroneously. But we're talking about on another level, a higher level. We need to seek to die. It's like a seed needs to die in order to live and thrive. It's there in nature. It makes perfect sense. And this is what the daily review helps to do. And so does listening to others with empathy. These practices will consciously invite and invoke forces of death into our life. To quote Rudolf Steiner on the subject, this elevated form of love, lifted to the spiritual spheres and transformed into a force of knowledge, teaches us the true significance of death. This is heavy and deep stuff, I know, but so I'm going to repeat it. This elevated form of love, lifted to the spiritual spheres and transformed into a force of knowledge, teaches us the true significance of death. Whew. Put that in your vaporizer and smoke it. So, ironically, the result of undergoing a form of egoic death produces what all the mystics and gurus and such of the past have known, that an inner knowing can grow in the clean, clear space created. Being a master of time and space is more than a catchphrase. It's an inner reality we can achieve. To create time and space within ourselves that's clean and clear. True seekers of the past have known that a price is to be paid for higher knowledge. You have to pay for it with yourself. You have to pay attention. It's a full-on commitment, a full-time commitment. If we can't make that commitment of self, then we're just really going to get a simulacrum of knowledge. Simulacrum of knowledge, an outer knowledge of things, the outer shell of things, without getting a taste of the chewy caramel center of things. But to undergo egoic death, as was what was happening in the temple sleep initiations of ancient times, and sometimes still experienced somewhat today in the substance-induced ways of shamanic practices. With this death, our consciousness is literally outside of the physical body. Our consciousness moves outside of the physical body, which allows us to see things from another level. Our consciousness is not so bound to the earthly influences of the body, and so our powers of love are not bound to our animal form and our animal instincts, which allows it to be elevated to a higher form of expression because of this egoic death that allows the consciousness to go beyond the physical body. It reminds me of the lyrics of the song, "Love, lift us up. Love, lift us up where we belong, where the eagles cry on a mountain high. Love, lift us up where we belong, far from the world below, up where the clear winds blow." I'm going to play that at the break. Where eagles fly on a mountain high. This is, of course, speaking metaphorically. We're not talking about flying around like an eagle around a mountain. It's speaking of the elevation of love, the higher octave of love, higher than an animal expression. This is bringing higher love into human form, and in fact serves to raise the animal level of consciousness to its next step in the planet. And we should recall something that was said in the series 1 about warmth. Warmth. There is, of course, physical warmth, which is the only kind of warmth that science acknowledges, because they can quantify it, because they have the instruments to measure physical warmth. But at that, they don't really acknowledge warmth as an element. They just say warmth is a product of other elements interacting. So that's the extent of warmth being acknowledged scientifically. But we all experience and acknowledge the presence and phenomenon of higher forms of warmth. One could even call it animal warmth or soul warmth, the warmth of personality, the presence of a warmth that is not measurable, but certainly experienced qualitatively. For example, the warmth and exuberance of an audience responding to a spectacular musical performance. That's the second form of warmth. Then there is spiritual warmth, the warmth of love, especially a higher love. And this warmth, this third kind of warmth, brings us back to the original warmth that began our development at stage 1 of the planet, as described back in series 1. The warmth of the cosmos that created us. And it is this same warmth that is still running in us, that original warmth, still running in us as so-called warm-blooded mammals or animals. It is this warmth, when elevated, that can act as the medium, the bridge that allows us to connect to the warmth that is in nature, that runs through all of nature. This third kind of warmth, what we can call spiritual warmth, is what allows us to connect and to know something else. It is through this medium of warmth the truth of something else can be revealed to us. It could be looked at as a mingling of warmth that acts as a field that opens the way of true knowing. It allows us to connect to what is behind nature, the true essence of everything in the natural realm. And so this original warmth, which can now be looked at as the product of love that led to our inception in the very beginning, is now the love that is needed to be freely fostered in us so we can have access to all-knowing. Yes, all-knowing. All-knowing is available. And it doesn't take having all sorts of money to build or buy instruments of a modern technological nature in order to have all-knowing, which may be disappointing for the geeks in our midst who look to technology as the ultimate way of knowing. But that sort of technology is mostly about measurement, numbers and data, and an extension of our senses. But the real technology for knowing is within you. Within you. Because that is where knowing takes place, right? Within you, not outside of you. Knowing takes place within the knower. Nowhere else. Not in the instruments that open access to information and extract information. That information still has to be decoded and interpreted and turned into living knowledge. And you are the technology to do that. You just need to unpack it and grow that technology. Unpack it in warmth. Then, as Steiner has stated, if we have the right inner space, the warmth of love that is selfless, and undergo a metamorphosis of egoic death and rebirth, the ego not in the Freudian sense, but in the Steinerian sense, we then become transceivers to which real information can be imparted. And when we create the time and space to unpack this part of ourselves, as with the Steiner practices I've described, then the seed of love within you, inside of you, can come into contact with that which is on the outside. Something inside of you can come into contact with the world outside of you. With this form of development, our relationship to everything will change. I promise you that. With this form of development, our relationship to everything will change. Previously, our relationship to an object was determined by space, right? I am here and the object is there. Here and there were the determinate coordinates. And this sort of separation is in fact a necessary step in becoming a free ego being. But if our ego development stops there, we're just left in a place of separation, looking at things from the outside, strictly with our senses, and not with other organs at our disposal, which we're talking about here. And as a result, we become veiled or tricked or fooled by the Maya matrix. The veil is there rather than the unveiling or revealing. But when we start to use and see with other organs, looking through our heart, for example, we can transcend this separateness. We'll look at this more in detail later in another session. But if we're using the heart as an organ of perception, and it is the heart that mediates the warmth in us, all three kinds of warmth on all levels, physical, soul, and spiritual, then warmth will do what warmth will do. Warmth will rise. It will expand. It will transcend. And it will take us and our perception with it. Up where eagles cry, on a mountain high, far from the world below, up where the clear winds blow. As we rise with warmth of love, we will see things from above. What does this look like? When we are transcending the separateness of time and space, we will no longer be experiencing separateness, at least not for the moments when we are connecting with an object we are observing. Instead, we will experience something of it in us and us in it. We'll experience something of it in us and us in it, because we have shaped the space momentarily to allow this. We're able to connect with the beingness of the thing itself and not just the material manifestation of it. To do contemplations of nature, such as the plant realm or the animal realm or the mineral realm, is a healthy and safe training for these higher organs of perception to unfold. There we can practice and experience what Steiner refers to as a love that can ignore self and live with warmth in the warmth of the other. I'll say that again. When we practice this, we'll experience what Steiner refers to as a love that can ignore self and live with warmth in the warmth of the other. I'll give you a full quote of his. The highest degree of love consists not in forgetting oneself, but in being able to ignore oneself completely and enter into what is not oneself. Only when this love goes hand in hand with higher cognition are we really able to enter the spiritual with all the warmth of our nature and our soul forces. We must do this if we are to progress in knowledge. Love must become a cognitive force in this sense. Now, I know it's a lot to chew on. I certainly find these are big, paradigm-shifting concepts, and it may take a while for it to sink in and to really accept a new paradigm. But this is what we're working at here in the School of Love, to undergo a training of our ego nature, our cognitive nature, and to land a new way of being. But additionally, I want to mention that to achieve this transcendental state of a higher love requires a transcending of personal sympathies and antipathies. Sympathies and antipathies. That's our personal likes and dislikes, things that we're attracted to or we're repelled by. We need to transcend these. We need to overcome these. For example, when I went scuba diving recently, and I dove down to 40, 50, 60 feet below the surface of the water, I saw a lot of strange things that I do not normally see, not above water. And it would be easy for me or anyone to react in many ways, including being repelled by these odd creatures or even fearful of the strange sights and so forth that occupy the ocean. But in order to connect to the truth of these beings and their existence, I had to transcend these surges of feelings, these reactions, my sympathies, my antipathies, my likes, my dislikes, and go into a pure state, into a state of pure, perfected love, where I can experience with a pure empathy the experience of the other, to know the other for what it really is and what its experience is. And this is actually a very high experience and not so easily attained until we have progressed to a certain place where we can willfully step out of ourselves for a time into a place of the other, including a strange sea creature. But then, after ignoring ourselves for a while, as Steiner puts it, we then go back into ourselves. And this is where warmth as a medium is so important. And the gravity of love helps us to find our way out of ourselves and back into ourselves safely. We can practice this in our contemplations of nature, going out into the natural realm. And then eventually we become strong in our selfhood to apply these contemplations to the human itself, which can sometimes be confusing because humans can be confused and confusing. But we must take up this challenge as really the highest form of artistry. The social arts. The social arts is the highest form of artistry. And so to take our training and apply it to our interactions with our fellow human being. And of course, this means the ability to love our fellow human being, which is the highest call of all. If we are going to create this one body of love, which is the ultimate blooming of the planet. To be joined together as free will individuals, consciously loving in one body of love. And as we pursue this lofty goal, all limitations will be removed. Limitations of knowledge will be removed because we need all knowledge to bring this to pass. And so we can say all will be revealed. So I'd like to close with a repetition of the opening quote. Again, only if I love something can it reveal itself to me. So in summary, we are looking at love in a new and exciting way. Love as a cognitive power. You could even say a cognitive organ. The power to know a greater reality. And the exciting prospect is that it is here in the world of the senses, the manifest realm. This is the place where we can move ourselves forward in the unfolding of this love-based cognitive power, which will then eventually carry us into living within the larger, expanded reality, including the unmanifest, the spiritual. This is the exciting edge that love offers. A purifying and perfecting of our love will open the way to true knowing, true action, true being. It is in fact the major missing piece in modern science, understanding the nature of knowing, epistemology, and how our inner state is in relationship with the outer aspects of life, including how information flows to us from the outside to the inside. This is what's missing in scientific knowledge. The preparation for this takes place when we strengthen our capacity for love in the manifest world. And the greater the selfless love we can develop in the physical world, the stronger the cognitive power of love grows, allowing us to know a greater spiritual reality that we are exubating in. That, my friends, is worth working toward. So we'll now take a short break, and I'll play one of my favorite songs, Love Lifts Us Up. And when we return, I'm going to lead everyone in this Ruksha review practice so you get a sense of how it works, and you learn it, and then we'll have Q&A, time for heart sharings, and then close with meditative music. So what I want to do is to introduce to you all the Ruksha daily review exercise. As I said, this is probably one of the most important practices you could ever do, and I've explained some of the whys and wherefores. But now I'll explain a bit of the how. To repeat what I said before, this is something to do towards the end of the day, but not just before going to sleep. Like I tend to do it before I get into my jammies and brush my teeth, because, when you put on your jammies and brush your teeth, it's a signal to the brain it's time to go to sleep, time to wind down. And you don't want to fall asleep during the Ruksha practice, but you do want to be in a relaxed meditative state. Something you do with your eyes closed, obviously, because you're going to be mental picturing the day. And also advise that you don't sit on your bed, lounge on your bed, but sit upright in your verticality, because that's really the best posture for downloading and making the practice a full body experience, full bodies. Because if you want to get technical about it, you're in your physical body, but you're accessing memories that have been imprinted on the etheric life body, and you're using your astral body, which is the body of mobility and vision, and you are doing this with consciousness, so your egoic self is present. So you want all parts of yourself in alignment, on board, and active. So once you're in the right position and set to do it, it's not going to be a long thing necessarily. It can be 5 minutes, might go to 10 minutes. I know some people that really love this and they rock it and they want to go 10-15 minutes. It's better than watching a YouTube video before going to bed. They're actually looking at themselves, looking at their own life, and seeing new things, seeing new plot points being revealed, mysteries being unveiled, and secrets being spoken in that space from a higher perspective. And it feels very strengthening of the will. It's like if you went to the gym regularly and were pumping iron. You do that for a few days, do that for a few weeks, you're going to feel really good. You're going to feel really buff in your physical body. You're going to feel a certain resilience from having regularly worked those muscles. Same thing with this etheric astral muscle that's being worked. You're going to feel strengthening, you're going to feel more buff in those bodies, and a greater resilience. It's so many benefits to this, I couldn't even enumerate them all. But let's get down to the actual practice of it. We're going to do this for, go for about 5 minutes or so, reviewing your day backwards. I'm going to lead it. Obviously, I'm not going to be there to lead it every day for you, but you're going to lead yourself, which is why it's so strengthening of the will. You're going to have to be present and put your will into it without someone leading you and keeping you awake in it. But for this evening, I will lead you and give you an example of what it could be like going through the different parts of the day. So I think I'll start, and then we can have Q&A afterwards and so forth. So yeah, just closing the eyes and taking a moment to adjust your posture so you're comfortable, not going to be distracted by your body, and connecting with the breath. Just moving out of the head and more into the heart space through connection with the breath. Just becoming more inward and involuted. And you can open up the visual space, perhaps by beginning with seeing a heart or a flame or light, just to awaken the inner visual space. So we're going to start to go backwards through the day. So during the break, we listen to a song, so just recall that. And prior to that, we had about an hour of School of Love. Jesse was talking, teaching. Just be with what your feelings are around that, the overall feeling and mood of that hour. Perhaps visualizing my face on the computer screen. And then going back to the beginning, logging into Zoom, and what you were doing before that. What were you doing immediately before logging in? Where were you? Visualize the room that you were in. Just note anything of significance. And seeing yourself. And when it comes to the perspective, you can either see things from your own perspective, from your own eyes, or you can see yourself. You could perhaps visualize yourself sitting there, or say, for example, going back to dinner time. Let's go back to your dinner time, seeing yourself there eating. What was the food on the plate? See yourself preparing the meal. Going back further in time to what you were doing before supper. Where were you? Who were you with? What were you doing? Visualize yourself there and see what comes with the remembering of that part of your day. Just look over your afternoon. What were the different events of the afternoon? See yourself, the mood you're in, the thoughts you had, quality of interaction with others. And of course I'm going fairly quickly here, but if there was something that really grabs your attention, you could stay with that and dwell with that and really be with the flavor of that moment of the day, just really digesting it. Let's move back now to lunchtime. Did you have lunch? What did you eat? Just scanning through the different things that happened, step by step, going backwards through the day. Now looking at your morning, what filled your morning? Was there any significant digital encounters, for example? Did you spend any time reading anything? Can you recall standout thoughts that you had in your morning? Going back to the early part of the morning where you got up and had breakfast, did your morning routine. Just take a moment to go over that. Yeah, what did you do upon awakening? Going back to the very beginning of the day, what was the wake up? Was it your alarm clock going off? Did someone phone you, or did you wake up naturally? And were there some dreams that you remember or remembered back then? Just being with those first moments of awakening. Was there a sense of anything coming through the night? And so we'll bring this practice to a close. Just bringing yourself back to outer awareness. And I like to take my hands, rub them together to create warmth through friction, making the palms nice and warm. And when they're warm, gently cupping them over the eyes, drawing that warmth into the eyes, into the head, even down into the heart, down into the belly, for that threefold coherence. And when finished, snapping back.